Welcome once again to Sid Caudle. And Sid, we're going to do both sides of the Atlantic with enthusiasm this week because lots going on.
Yes.
It's always been said what America does today, we'll do tomorrow.
Mm,
A lot of truth in it, not
mm,
absolute truth, but I'm thinking still the Charlie Kirk event, horrible event, goes on.
mm.
And particularly with that meeting of 100,000 in the sports stadium at weekend, some
Yes.
significant things coming out there, Sid.
Yes, I watched the whole thing and I found it absolutely amazing and incredibly inspiring. I think what touched me most was the extent to which all the head of the government in the United States of America was there speaking, and not just half-heartedly, not just sort of paying lip service to the fact, oh yes, and he was a Christian, and we honor his Christian convictions. I mean, they were literally saying, you know. Charlie Kirk stood for Jesus and his values are values that America needs, and they were saying them wholeheartedly, and it wasn't just one, it was Rubio, the Secretary of State, it was J.D. Vance, the Vice President, it was Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, and it was just one after another. Peter Hesketh, Secretary of State for Defense, one after the other, and then of course at the end. It was Donald Trump himself who also was speaking wholeheartedly for, the Christian convictions of Charlie Kirk, which our nation needs. And you just think, wow, wow,
Well,
really.
you think, wow, why can't it happen in Britain? You can't see that in a million years, could you?
Well, not with this Labour government. I mean, it's the opposite. Keir Starmer says, well, yeah, I was christened, but it's we don't just honour the Christian faith. We honour all the faiths here in Great Britain, which is basically the position of the King. We honour all the faiths. We don't just honour one faith. It's the way we are now in this country is we've abandoned the faith to a large extent, whereas the United States is embracing it wholeheartedly. And it will be interesting to see the extent to which God honors that government, frankly. I mean, they've still only been in power for less than a year, which we can forget because, Donald Trump, of course, was president for 4 years previously. So this isn't his first run, and people sort of get used to the fact, oh, Donald Trump's been president for quite a while. But actually, in this run, he only started at the beginning of the year. So he's only been in power for about 9 months this time round, and or even less because it was 21st of January when he started. So it's I think in time you'll see the something happen to the American economy which will be phenomenal. Frankly, I think you'll see wealth growing, the deficit disappearing completely, and you'll see wealth returning to the nation. Absolutely, with this sort of government, God will honour it.
Well, in 9 months, Sid, he's done more than a decade in the British system would have allowed him.
Well, he's certainly done incredibly well on the border. I mean, there's no question. I mean, he actually said that they've now said that the number of illegal immigrants coming into the United States is nil, which is phenomenal, phenomenal. I mean, he built that wall, and of course, Biden opened the gates and said, we don't want the wall, and started dismantling it. And just basically announced that we'll send nobody back. Trump said the opposite, and it's been incredibly effective. And he's also now, of course, trying to send some people back that should never have been let in, in the first place, that shouldn't be in the country. That's a difficult process because then the courts get involved. But, he's done phenomenally well on that. He's done well on taxation. And really, I mean, he's reduced taxes and he's done very well on tariffs. Which is incredible because all the left wing were all saying, oh, if you introduce tariffs, it will be disastrous. Inflation will soar. Inflation's actually gone down in the United States. It's been in Britain where it's doubled, and it'll be disastrous for the economy. It's proving the opposite. It's absolutely proving the opposite. And they're bringing in literally the last figure I saw was $350 billion that was come in through tariffs. The amount of money that they're getting in is enormous. And in time, we'll really see the effect of that. And by the way, while I'm just saying this, I've been looking at the figures of the deficit in the United States and the percentage of debt to GDP, which under Trump last time was about 96%, which is manageable. But under Biden, it actually went up from 96% to 120%, of GDP. So Biden let debt rip, and there was frankly no reason for it because, you know, Trump had to put up with COVID. But by the time Biden came into power, the COVID was largely dealt with by Trump. He didn't really have much to do. The main issues were solved. I mean, in the last year of Trump's office, the first time round, he had to deal with COVID, and it really wrecked the economy, which was going so well. But there was no reason for under Biden, for the problems to solve again. But instead of that, you see, what Biden did was launched his massive, $1 trillion bills, and the result of it was, debt just soared.
Yeah. Before we leave this and go from the sublime to maybe a bit more ridiculous, which we're about to do, let's finally mention that during Charlie Kirk's event over the weekend, we've mentioned the obviously Republicans that were supporting from the Christian point of view. It was surprising how many Democrats came along and supported, which was very unusual.
Yes, well, it's interesting, but the Democrats, of course, are very divided. I mean, you've had Alexandra Cortez there in speaking in the House of Congress and basically attacking Charlie Kirk and saying, what a terrible legacy he's left. So there've been some Democrats, and also, of course, when they called for a minute's silence, some Democrats were shouting no in Congress. I think about 58 of them actually voted against having a memorial for Charlie Kirk. But so the Democrats are divided. It's good that there are some that are saying, yeah, we're Christians, we've got to speak out, we've got to honor him. It's good that there's some that are in that position. But you see, I have a feeling that those people might well end up like Tulsi Gabbard, who are 1 minute Democrats and the next minute leave and join the Republican Party.
Mm.
Because the way the Democrat Party is going is more and more left wing. That's the reality of it.
Okay, moving on to the ridiculous, which I threatened. We quickly move on and we mention the wonderful Davy, friend that's leading the Liberal Party in sunny Bournemouth, and he's leading the parade out of sync, out of step, but he's not out of step with having a go at Nigel because everybody's having a go at Nigel. Obviously, that's where the fear factor comes in. He's about 12 points ahead at the moment. So let's have a go at Nigel. And of course, the immigration thing is Liberal Democrat territory, and the Green thing is Liberal Democrat territory. But significantly, Sid, they're going to do a deal with Labour to get back in again. Oh, horror of horrors.
Yes, well, it's interesting, isn't it? You see, we've just been talking about the US economy and, the success that Trump's having already, which we think he'll have a lot more success as time goes on. And of course, what's happening in the UK is the complete opposite. We've seen inflation double, the deficit's gone up by 100 billion from 54 billion they inherited now to 158 billion. That's the deficit, by the way, is the difference between the income of the country compared with what you spend. And when it goes up to those levels, obviously it's extremely serious. And we've seen taxes rising, where taxes have been cut in the United States. We've seen capital investment going down here. Capital investment is soaring in the United States. And Ed Davey is basically saying Trump is a disaster. All his policies are terrible. and we must stop reform at all costs because they're going to follow Trump's policies. And if I have a choice, I'll keep Labour in power. So he's basically saying, he's got no problem with Labour's policies, which frankly, in my view, is absolutely ridiculous because he's not really being honest about what's going on, or otherwise he's closing his eyes. But I think I'll tell you what he's really saying. What he's really saying is, I support transsexualism. I support all the woke agenda. I want to see self-ID. I support Hamas. I support what Labour are doing in terms of recognising a Palestinian state, and I'm quite happy to have open borders. I want open borders. I don't want anything done to stop people coming into the country. That's what he's really saying. It's not the economic policies, because the economic policies are a total disaster. So what he's really saying, it's all these other policies which he supports, which it appears Nigel Farage would largely oppose. And frankly, what he stands for now, in my view, is utterly evil.
Interesting stuff there. And I suppose a question that I would ask any Labour or Liberal Democrat that should be on the joining up papers when you think, oh, I'll become an MP. They should be answering two questions, Sid, in my opinion. Number one, define a woman.
Yes,
Can a man become a woman or vice versa? Number one question. And secondly, please define what is a working man, a working
yes,
mum, a working person, whatever. Those are two important questions and they can't get them right.
yes, absolutely. I mean, a woman is an adult human female, and can a woman have a penis? And it's like Ed Davey can't answer that question. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people in the Labour Party that can't answer that question. Well, we're not sure. I mean, in some circumstances, people can change sex. No, they can't. And now we've actually had the Supreme Court that has ruled that a man's sex is what they are when they're born. Or a person's sex is what they are when they're born. They can't change sex. See, a man can dress as a woman. A man can be castrated, can have his sexual organs cut off, but he cannot change his chromosomes. It's you're either born with two X chromosomes, or you're born with, and you're a woman, or you're born with an X and Y chromosome, and you're a man, and that's the reality of it. And you see, we also have a situation where there's an enormous amount of transgender regret, especially among young people. I mean, Keira Bell was, the classic example. I mean, when she was 15, she had a sex change operation and had her breasts removed and all this sort of thing. And when she's 18, she says, "What on earth have you done to me? Why did you allow this to be done to me? I mean, I didn't know when I was 15, the implications of what you're doing, but you've actually ruined my body. I don't want to be a man. I want to be a woman. That's what I am." And she's actually goes to court for other people in her situation and says, "Look, please stop this insanity." And she's not alone. And because of that reality, we've now got a situation where, thank goodness, they're actually saying you can't perform sex change operations on people under 18. And there's a lot of states in the United States that have actually passed that law now, that have said you cannot perform sex change operations on people under 18. But it's not yet universal, but it should be universal because it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. And we've got to face reality. Absolutely, we have to face reality. God made man and woman. That's the truth.
Fundamental of who you vote for.
Yes.
And let's go for some good news. Well, presented by the Prime Minister, Starmer, when Trump came over. Oh, look what I've done. I've got you fantastic 250 billion number alters from 150 to 250 at will. A big input to our economy. Truth is, of course, that these arrangements are done behind closed doors, months or even year before and come out to fruition at an appropriate time. And one of the things, of course, is Microsoft. And they're coming over to put a massive supercomputer in the good infrastructure that we have in the United Kingdom for fiber optic, etc. Not for domestic purposes, I quickly add, but for commercial purposes, it's excellent. And they can't wait. But what's in it for America? Well, it's very simple. Americans don't do anything for nothing, and neither do they here. The reason, of course, is the best brains, together with Silicon Valley, are over in Great Britain. The Oxbridge, etc., are top universities, and other companies that are hiding behind, again, their own closed doors, but they're brilliant. So everybody gets a bite at the cherry, which is good news, Siddur.
Well, yes, we are very good at this country at innovation, to putting ideas forward and developing things. Like you say, some of the best brains in the world are here in the United Kingdom. What we're not very good at is developing ideas into commercial reality. And I guess America is way better. So they're quite happy to come along and say, yeah, we want to have a look at some of your ideas and see what we can actually make a commercial reality out of them. So yeah, they'll benefit and they'll make a lot more money out of, that process than we will of just coming up with ideas, I guess. But if we are working together with America to our mutual benefit, then great. Like you say, it's probably not just happened, because of this visit. But I must say, although we've been very critical of Keir Starmer, he did do well on that visit, although there's a certain amount of dishonesty approach attached to it. Because like when he was asked, you're going to recognize the Palestinian state as soon as Trump has left, why don't you do it now, to his face? Are you scared to do it, to his face? And he basically said, yeah, I'm not doing it now. And 2 days later, after he's left, he suddenly announces, I'm recognizing a Palestinian state. I mean, Keir Starmer is the most dishonest politician I've ever come across. Everything he says is just for appearance. And by the way, I mean, you might want to talk about immigration later, I don't know, but I mean, I just thought how utterly ridiculous it is when we've got 1,000 people now in one day coming across in small boats to the United Kingdom, that Keir Starmer announces we've sent one back. This is a tremendous achievement. We've sent one back. This is the beginning of sending people back. One person flew on a flight to India. Well, actually, they didn't. It was an Indian that flew on a flight to Paris, I believe. Because we sent them back to France.
And if
And
you want to add the last nail into that particular comment, we've sent them back to France. And then because they have an agreement with India, that's the only condition they would accept that person, that they sent him back to India. But hang on, let's dig. And we find out we've also got an agreement with India. We could have sent that person back to India. Why didn't we?
no, it's ridiculous, isn't it? It's farcical, frankly. And the fact that we've sent him back to France, who knows? I mean, the man might well come back on a small boat again and come back to the United Kingdom. I mean, it's just. I mean, but that's just one person. Yeah, absolutely, we should have been sending him back to India. You see, there's a battle going on in America about this guy who's been organising some of the riots at one of the key universities in America, and he's from Syria and Algeria, and Trump was sending him back to Syria. He's not sending him back to Mexico or something, It's just, because he came across the border from Mexico, it's just ridiculous. They should be sent back to the country they belong to, not to the neighboring country that they came from. I mean, but you see, but to me, what is so utterly farcical is crowing in the media about one person being sent back. I mean, really, it's just utterly farcical.
It is indeed. Let's go on to Lord Hunt, Minister, Tory government some years ago. He's frankly had enough of the eco zealots He's come out and said they're full of wind. They are ecological mythologists and ideologists. He's come out with a run of statements there, and he's absolutely right. It's getting out of hand. There's a planning permission granted. It can be done sometimes. Massive windmills. I mean, there's some big up there in the North Sea, but that's nothing compared with what they're going to put on the Highlands of Scotland. It's going to ruin the Highlands of Scotland, and it's gone straight through, even though they cost a fortune in subsidies because we got to pay the companies when there's too much wind. So we've got to subsidise that. It's a nonsense. Who's paying for it? Me and you, Sid.
Well, exactly. I mean, we were told, at the last general election that if we have more renewable energy, more wind and more solar, then bills will come down on average, by £90. That's what they said. That bills have actually gone up by £100. And Ed Miliband now has suddenly that he's said that he's going to change his position, having come into power saying we've got to get rid of all fossil fuels, we've got to cancel all oil production from the North Sea. He's now saying, I've changed my mind. I'm going to allow oil production from the North Sea. But companies can't operate like this. You can't have, oh, we've changed our minds. You can go back to the North Sea and start drilling again. I mean, a company has to plan years in advance. And frankly, what Ed Miliband has done and what the Labour Party has done to the North Sea is absolutely criminal, because we should be exploring, we should be bringing in substantial amounts of oil, and stopping them drilling is just a terrible decision. And now saying, oh, we made a mistake, is actually costing the country billions, absolutely billions. And this Labour Party, frankly, has got no right to be in power because they haven't thought through any of their policies. Announcing policies and then announcing a U-turn just 15 months later is totally, totally unacceptable.
This end of the line here, we get inundated, and I mean inundated every day of the week with one question. Why can't we get rid of these people now? Why do we have to wait another 4 years before they do even more damage? Is there no way of getting rid of them? Well, Nigel is hoping in a couple of years the backbenchers revolt will be that big, they'll have to go. But constitutionally, inverted commas, is there anything we can do, Sid?
No, there isn't. I mean, basically, we have elected a government for 5 years, and the only person who can call a general election is the Prime Minister. Earlier than that, um, we can have a vote of no confidence in Parliament, in the government, but as you say, it would mean that there'd be a substantial number of people elected as Labour members of Parliament who then turned against their own government. I mean, people were thinking that maybe we're going to have a Jeremy Corbyn party that arises within Parliament and provides an alternative for people on the left that aren't happy with Keir Starmer. But that party's proving to be a complete disaster. I
Says,
mean, and they're arguing amongst each other. So at the moment, they're not providing an option for people on the left of the Labour Party.
no,
But
don't
there
count
isn't.
on your sultanas there.
Well, yes, I mean, she's obviously shown herself to be totally unsuitable because, you know, I'll tell you one rule in politics is that you do not attack people on your own side in public. In private, you can say as much as you like, sorry, I'm not happy with what you're doing, we got to change this policy. But in public, you do not go on television and say, my leader is make fundamental mistakes. You just don't do that. I mean, and that's what she's done with Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, she just turned around and started attacking Jeremy Corbyn in public, and then she started making a complete mess of the whole administration of the party. And then she's even threatened to take Corbyn to court. I mean, it's just ridiculous. You can't have leadership that carries on like that, I'm afraid. So the whole party's a complete mess. The Greens, though, do seem to be reviving, and it's quite interesting that someone like Owen Jones, who's on the far left, who's actually supporting Corbyn, is now saying, "Well, I'm not happy with this new party. It's not working, so it's probably going to be better if we all just get behind the Greens." They've got a new leader who seems to have a bit of charisma. The Greens are going up in the opinion polls. They're totally supporting Hamas. They're totally on the far left. There's no question about that. Obviously they support all the environment hoax, and people on the far left are finding a home in the Greens, and I think that's frankly what will grow and happen. I think your party, Jeremy Corbyn, is dead in the water.
Well, that's an interesting point about having charisma. Perhaps he's hypnotized everybody, and that's what people
Yes.
perhaps think. What a mess, isn't it? I mean, there's not a lot on offer, which is why Nigel is 12 points ahead.
Yes,
We don't know what we're going to get with him, but we're desperate enough to vote for him.
well, it's interesting, yes, that the new leader of the Green Party is a hypnotist. Yeah, I mean, it just shows really the sort of people that are in the Green Party. I mean, people that are absolutely viciously anti-Christian. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm not entirely happy with Nigel Farage, but at the moment, he's certainly the best on offer. I'm not entirely unhappy either with Kemi Badenoch, but I think she made a big mistake in saying that I don't believe in God, unfortunately. The way the way things have gone, particularly with Charlie Kirk's funeral, I think that was a massive, massive error. Even if it's true, she should never have said it. Never have said it.
No, no, you're right. 9 out of 10 Britons think that Starmer's an absolute ass for going for the Palestinians and giving them a state. Do you agree with 9 out of 10, Sid?
Well, yes, absolutely. It's the problem, frankly, is that they are rewarding terror, which is basically what Israel has said. But it's true. It's what I said, frankly, when this was first announced. That we're thinking of recognizing a Palestinian state. I said, well, if you recognize a Palestinian state, you're basically saying to Hamas, okay, you've invaded Israel, and we're going to reward you by recognizing a Palestinian state. And that's what Hamas is saying. Look, we've invaded Israel, we've killed 1,200 people, and what we're going to get for it is a recognition of a Palestinian state. So we've done the right thing. If we'd done nothing, a Palestinian state would never have been recognized. You see, and one thing that you must never do, never in life, is reward bad behavior. And that's what's happening, frankly. And I find it, incredible that people like Starmer and other Macron and other leaders that are doing this can't actually see the effect of their doing. And the other thing, by the way, is that people inside Gaza, because I was listening to somebody from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation who's working inside Gaza. And he actually said that they were on the verge of a peace agreement. And when it was announced that they were going to have that France and the UK and other countries were going to recognize a Palestinian state, suddenly Hamas um, suddenly announced that they were no longer interested in a peace agreement. And that's why this whole invasion of Gaza cities had to take place, because what was going to be a peace agreement with a swap of hostages for prisoners and a 60-day ceasefire, which was on the verge, frankly, of being agreed and expected to be agreed, was suddenly off the table because of Britain, France, and whatever. That's the reality.
Well, if you look at who's voted, it certainly is the left of centre, the well left of centre governments, including Canada and Australia, of course. So it's hard to see unless you look at the spiritual side of this, what's driving these people. I mean, they must know the facts Somebody along the line knows the facts. Are they not advising the Prime Minister? Or is he just ignoring it willfully? Or are the civil servants behind this as well?
Well, I think it's also a total failure to get to grips with the reality of Islamic terrorism. You
Hmm.
see, they don't seem to grasp that Islamic terrorists want to wipe Israel off the map. And that's in the Hamas charter, is part of Islam. Muhammad actually said, kill the Jews. And you know, people that are committed to killing Jews, wiping Israel off the map, cannot form a two-state solution where they live in peace with the Jews. That's the reality of it. You see, what actually happened was, if you go back in history, was that, in 1918, we had the Balfour Declaration to set up a new state of Israel. In 1920, we had the San Remo Accords, which drew the maps and gave Israel a large amount of land, but also created new countries called Syria and Iraq at the same time out of the ashes of the Ottoman Empire. What then happened was that in 1946 we had a two-state solution where some 75% of the land that was given to Israel was taken off them and a new country of Jordan was created. And that new country of Jordan was created for the Arabs, for Palestinians, and Israel was formed. And there's plenty of space in Jordan for the Palestinians to go. There's 3 to 4 million Palestinians in Jordan now. There's a lot more Palestinians in Jordan than there are in Israel. That's the reality of it. So, if there is a state for the Palestinians now called Jordan, let them go and live there. There's no reason whatsoever why they shouldn't go and live there in their state. They don't have to say, "Oh, we're going to carve out part of Israel and create another state." And the other thing, by the way, while I'm just talking about this, is, you see, I totally believe in local government for the Arabs within Israel. Absolutely, they should have local government, just as we have local government in Scotland and local government in Wales, and there's no reason why, they shouldn't have. Well, they should have local government where they control themselves, but that's already happening, but it's just unfortunately that elections were cancelled. So we haven't had elections in the Palestinian areas for 20 years. But that's their problem because they refuse to organise them. But we should have local government. See, what we can't have is a state, because once you have a state, you have an army. And if you put an army in what is known as the West Bank, which Israel calls Judea and Samaria, and have an Arab army with tanks and weapons and rockets and goodness knows what else, because you've now got a state, that state, whoever governs it, the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, because those people there have said that they would prefer Hamas ruling them than they would the Palestinian Authority. And if you operate on the principle of self-determination, and you say they have a right to choose who rules them, so you can't take away that right. If they want to choose to have Hamas ruling them, we cannot allow Hamas in what is known as the West Bank to have an army and guns and so off just on the border of Israel. It can't happen.
So, therefore, one must conclude you are not in favour of a two-state solution.
Well, there is a two-state solution. The other state is Jordan. It's already happened. We've already had a two-state solution. What they want is another. Carve out another part of Israel and give it to the Arabs. No, absolutely not. And it's just never going to work. And anyone that thinks it can work is naive. Naive in the extreme. They do not understand Islamic extremism, Islamic radicalism, and what it stands for.
Indeed, a lady called Sarah Sackman stood up in Parliament this week and said Sharia courts should be allowed in Great Britain under our religious tolerance, inverted commas. Agree with that, Sid?
The problem with Sharia courts for me is that a key part of Sharia courts is that if anyone leaves their Muslim religion, there has to be a penalty. That penalty in many Muslim countries is death. So they literally say they have to be put to death if you leave your Muslim religion. A Sharia court in the UK couldn't apply the death penalty, but they would imply whatever penalties they could, including probably instructing their people that that these people must be deprived of anything that we can deprive them of, basically. And there's also the key issue about the role of women, because a man can divorce his wife by saying three times, "I divorce you." Talach, talach, talach. You are divorced. If a woman wants to divorce her husband, it's impossible, basically. Under the Quran, a woman, if they're disobedient, they have to be beaten. That's Surah 434. But a Sharia court will basically say to a woman who wants to divorce her husband because of the violence that she's been facing, or for whatever reason, you must go back and be a better wife. That's what a Sharia court will say. They'll never say, yes, okay, we'll grant you a divorce. So that's another reason, the attitude towards women, why Sharia courts are totally unacceptable in our society. But this is anyone that thinks that Sharia courts are acceptable is frankly naive and doesn't understand the Islamic religion.
Right, we go on from that problem to another problem, like going back a couple of decades, 3 decades even. The strikes that are now with us, even 4 decades. My goodness me, time flies. I'm looking those strikes that cause absolute misery, Sid. I'm talking, as an example, the recent 7 day underground strike. It caused havoc, cost us millions and millions of pounds. Some people put it into the billions. And they do it every year at an appropriate time. Let's move over to Europe. And they are causing misery every year in France. You've always got, which has become now a tradition, of the airlines going on strike, whether it be baggage handlers or those that direct air traffic controlling. They will go on strike, and it's always in summer where they can get away with it and cause terrible amount of damage. Doesn't happen any longer in Italy because they've passed a law saying, yeah, you can strike, but it's not going to be in the peak holiday season. Good idea, that.
Well, there needs to be control, but you see, it's interesting. We went through, like you say, 40 years ago, this whole process where we had a general election in 1974 on the platform of who runs Britain. Does the unions run the Britain, or does the government run Britain? And Ted Heath, that called the election on that platform, actually lost it. So the Labour Party got elected. And but then when Margaret Thatcher came in, then by the way, it had a massive number of strikes between 1974 and 1979, even to the extent that the rubbish was piled up in the streets, and there were, and no snow was removed, so all the snow was just left on the roads, and people couldn't function at all. And then Margaret Thatcher came into power in 1979 on the platform of she would control the unions. And she did control the unions, and she did it step by step. She didn't try and do it with one bill. She literally did it step by step. And, I think one of the best pieces of legislation was 1984, when it was by Norman Tebbit actually brought in the secret ballot. No strike can take place without a ballot of all the people that work in the industry. And that's the situation now. Now, suddenly, we now have a Labour government that comes in and says, we want to roll back all of Margaret Thatcher's legislation. So we want to go back and no longer have secret ballots before strikes. And we want to reintroduce the closed shop, and we want to reintroduce the right to secondary picketing. We want to roll back all these laws. They're mad. They're absolutely, utterly mad, frankly. and this employment rights bill or union rights bill, which they're now trying to introduce, is just taking us back to insanity, frankly. Um, you know, in,
Well, Starmer's got every opportunity now. She's gone. The lovely Angela, who put this into as a real left winger into play, he's got every opportunity. I mean, a lot of the big bosses are now saying you can't put ideological things through. This country is in a mess. The last thing we want is this workers' right extension. Is he going to do it? Has he got the guts to do it?
well, I honestly don't know, but you see, the situation now is Keir Starmer is no longer in control, frankly, because he's given way on the on so many things. Yeah, and that the backbenchers in the Labour Party can say, well, if he does something we don't like, then we can force him to change his mind. And so Keir Starmer is now ad hoc to his backbenchers. So if his backbenchers say, no, we want this employment rights bill, you can't stop it, Keir Starmer will have to say, well, okay, fair enough, I'll give it to you because he's not in control. That's the reality of it, I'm afraid. But it will be disastrous. And by the way, just while we're talking about the recent strike, the train strike, you see what that was about was that they're now saying instead of working for 35 hours a week, we want to work for 32 hours a week. So the Labour Party have already given them all the pay they want. So they now say, having given us all the pay we want, we now want to work for less hours. The reality of that, by the way, will not be that the train drivers will work for less hours. The reality of it will be, well, they'll get an extra 3 hours overtime pay, per week. So they'll earn more through that way than they earn through just getting a pay rise.
Backdoor for a massive pay rise. Let's
Mm.
concentrate on them from a little bit, Sid. They're getting away with murder, these drivers' unions, because they've got all the power. It's the same, isn't it? Whether you're French air traffic control, it's all about power. Do people, well, they don't, but they will now realize what these train drivers, etc., want and what they've already got. Let me tell you what you've already got, train drivers. First of all, your pension, final salary pension, very few of those left now, Sid. It always used to be the gold standard for the top people to get two-thirds final salary. But let me tell you that the train drivers have already got three-quarters final salary. They're unique. They're even more unique in lots of other ways. They will not allow, which is illegal, recruitment outside the union. Now, that's been in Act form for years, but they won't allow it. They've got that much power. It's illegal. It's anarchy. And they're going ahead with it. And just to put the cap on the whole thing, and this is part of the agreement written down that they want and therefore will not go on strike again. We want 2-for-1 tickets for all our train drivers for Legoland. We think our drivers are worth it. What's that got to do with it? But they are driving the nail into their own coffin, Sid. But nobody's got the guts to take these unions on.
Well, one problem that the train drivers have got is that with new technology, we don't actually need train drivers anymore. And we already see it with the DLR in London, these trains that operate without drivers. And it's now quite possible to introduce something on the whole of the London Underground where the whole of the London Underground operates without train drivers. Um, and that's the reality of it, I'm afraid. So if they carry on the way they are, that new technology will be introduced to the London Underground and all the train drivers will lose their jobs. That can happen. It could happen today,
Back to the
frankly.
miners' situation. It's exact repeat, isn't it?
Well, yes, yeah, and but because that can happen, and will happen if they carry on the way they are, in time. mean, I'm not saying it's necessarily going to happen under Sadiq Khan and the Labour Party, but Sadiq Khan's days are probably numbered. And we're probably going to have a new administration, hopefully, which has got the guts to turn around and say, I'm sorry, we're doing away with all train drivers on the London Underground. You're all going to lose your jobs, and we're now going to operate without train drivers. It's what they should be doing now, frankly. But it will push it forward faster if they keep going on strike.
Interesting. Sid, we're running out of time again. We must cover something that we regularly mention, but nothing seems to be done about it. So we'll keep at it. Christian persecution, Christian martyrdom. It's running officially at 100,000 Christians killed every year. You can double that safely if all the truth came out. And a lot of it's put mainly to Islamic aggression in Afghanistan, in Nigeria, wherever. There are lots of parts of the world where they just are killing Christians. And, oh, well, we've got to be tolerant about other religions. But tolerance comes to an end. There's many religions in this world, and most of them are harmless in a non-spiritual sense because they don't go around killing people. But I'm afraid Islam does. Now, let me tell you another problem, and that's the West. And this has grown up over many decades because we seek to control bad governments and we don't like sending our armies in under international law or under what could happen if we did. And the favourite way of dealing with a nation that's got out of hand is to do a deal, send arms to the opposition, whether it be a bad opposition, in other words, terrorists, feed the terrorists, give them arms, give them money, so that they will overcome the regime that's a bad regime there. And we've been doing it for years. But I'm afraid it's coming back to bite us. Because if you give money to bad regimes, dare one mention Gaza, just thinking we'd have done that, perhaps we have in some stages, what happens. Secondly, the West will not change its religious equality, inverted commas, very easily. All religions are equal and valuable. Well, they're not, and that is fact. Thirdly, many people are being influenced by the outraged regime. Now, what I mean by that is that, and you see it every day in various news programs where they get an opposite view, it's expressed in a scattergun way. The person, usually, I'm afraid to say, from the left, never stops talking. You press the go button, and that's it. How tutored they are, I don't know. But it's not a cogent argument. It's an extended rant. And people are taken in by this. So there's a thought for you, or three thoughts, Sid.
Yes, I think it's not only Islam, it's also communism that kills Christians. I mean, we had the example of Stalin, who they reckon probably put 30 million people to death, a lot of whom were Christians. Because Marx said that religion is the opiate of the people. So, certainly people on the left put a lot of Christians to death as well as Muslims. But you see, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think Cuba's another example where you had a really corrupt right-wing government in Batista, and then Castro comes along and says, I'll get rid of all this corruption. and he's then elected as leader of Cuba, and he's far worse than Batista. This happens over and over again, and you're quite right that it's the US, um, CIA, and it's the British Foreign Office. There's different people who go around the world thinking, oh, we've got to get rid of this corrupt government, and they support something that's far worse in order to get rid of the corrupt government. And they shouldn't. They should stop doing it, frankly. What they ought to do is focus on doing what's right and supporting what is right and what is good, and not thinking that if we support something evil to get rid of an evil, then we'll have something better. It doesn't work. And you've quoted a figure of something like 100,000 Christians being killed every year, or maybe 200,000. But the figure that I prefer to quote is the fact there's something like 350 million Christians in the world being persecuted. And yes, okay, there may be between 1 and 200,000 Christians being put to death. But it's not only the number that are being put to death that matters, it's also the numbers being oppressed, in one way or another. If Christians are just being arrested and put in prison simply because of their faith, or being beaten up simply because of their faith, that is also completely unacceptable. And that's what's going on in China, and it's going on in many countries across the world. And it should be something that's talked about a lot more in the media than it is. But because the media tends to be also anti-Christian, they keep quiet about it. But it is a massive, massive issue worldwide. Islam needs to be exposed for what it is, a thoroughly evil religion. And communism needs to be exposed for what it is, a thoroughly evil philosophy that oppresses people. Both of them are very bad for society. Christianity is absolutely good for a society because whether people are Christians or not, under a Christian government, nobody gets killed. People get honored and loved and cared for. And God bless America. God bless Fiji. Fiji's got a wonderful Christian government, and Christian governments do good. That's the reality of it, and that's what people need. That's why people should vote for the Christian People's Alliance, because we need Christian government in the United Kingdom.
There you go. We better get on to footy. We've got to go out on a note of hope. And we've had the Ballon d'Or, comes around every year, awards, and everybody says, oh, really? They say, oh, really, of course, sit on the fact that it's French journalists that vote for who gains the honours this year. And we've got a French winner again from Paris Saint-Germain. And that's all right. But it comes into focus when dear old Harry Kane, oh, yes, he's a pensioner, he's 31. But he scores more goals than anybody. And he came 13th in the list. It's about time we stop this nonsense, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting that Dembele, who won it, was actually bought by Barcelona for 96 million euros. Didn't do very well at all in Spain. Was then bought by Paris Saint-Germain for 43 million. So Barcelona made this 50 million euros loss on this player, and now he's won the Ballon d'Or with Paris Saint-Germain. So it must be you've got to give credit to Enrique because he's done something with that player that they couldn't do in Barcelona. So he certainly deserved the manager of the year, no question. I mean, and Paris Saint-Germain, let's be honest. I mean, they won the Champions League. Of course, they won everything in France because they tend to win everything in France anyway. But they got to the final of the International Club Championships, which was actually won by Chelsea. If people have forgotten, but they had a phenomenal season. So you don't take it away from praising Paris Saint-Germain for the season that they had. You're probably right about Harry Kane. I mean, it's unfortunately. He's hasn't got the limelight that he deserves, I guess, but he's been having a phenomenal season for Bayern Munich. Yeah.
Lastly, I'll put you on the spot. I like putting you on the spot, Sid. We'll stick to football. Who's the all-time winner from all the people that have got the Ballon d'Or? Who's your all-time winner?
Well, the footballer that I like watching most is Lionel Messi. I mean, and I think he's got a great character. You know, Ronaldo is a great footballer, but I don't, he's got a suspect character, I'm afraid. And he can sort of just go off, and he's not doesn't seem to be a pleasant person. Lionel Messi seems to be a wonderful guy, and he's the sort of guy that you would enjoy just going out for lunch with and having a chat and talking to, and he's just a great pleasure to watch. So he's my favorite.
And he's a little guy. It's not strength and brute force and ignorance, is it?
No, it's not. He's just a great pleasure to watch him playing. Yeah.
There you go. There's your happy note. Sid, thank you. We'll see you next week.
Okay.